Welcome again, once again, to another edition of Dog Nation's Freeze Frame. I'm Brandon Adams, happy to be joined here in a moment by the great former Georgia All-American and a terrific analyst, John Stinchcomb. Today, we're going to take a look at Georgia safety Lewis Cine and the role that he could play for the Bulldogs this season, both on and off the field. Really important value that Lewis potentially brings to UGA. I'll take this time to wish you a happy Easter for those of you celebrating here this weekend, and obviously hope you enjoy that time with family and friends. And here on this Friday, as you get your weekend started, I certainly hope that you're getting ready for a good one wherever that is. I want to send a special shout out as well to our sponsor here for this week, our friends at Harris Cherokee Casino Resort. A lot of you getting ready for spring break. A lot of you thinking about getaways right now. Don't forget the Harris Cherokee Casino Resort properties, both just a 2-hour drive from Atlanta, whether it's the original Harris Cherokee Casino Resort or the Harris Cherokee Valley River. Socially distanced gaming floor, completely reimagined there. The book, sports gaming, now available in the mountains of Western North Carolina at the Harris properties. And, of course, gourmet restaurants, luxurious spa, world-class shopping. It's all there at the Harris Cherokee Casino Resort and Harris Cherokee Valley River. To find out more, check out Caesars.com/Harris-Cherokee. That website, once again, Caesars.com/Harris-Cherokee. Our subject today, as I said a moment ago, is Georgia safety Lewis Cine, who really brings a rare level of experience to this Georgia secondary this year. Cine's played a lot. Most of the guys he'll be playing with will have played far less than him. And we've gotten accustomed to seeing Cine there patrolling the defensive secondary as a safety. But somewhat humorously, in a press conference to start the Georgia spring practices, Cine also said that, listen, he's also kind of cross-trained at least a little bit at another position there as well, at the cornerback spot, with Kirby Smart saying right now anyone's a candidate to be a cornerback. Lewis Cine said earlier this spring, in fact, maybe even him as well. This is Lewis from a little earlier.
My job is just making sure I work on my leadership role, making sure, I'm communicating with the young guys, making sure that we're on the same page back there, and, just trying to help them as much as I can.
John, I'm not quite so sure how much cornerback Lewis Cine will really play this year for Georgia. He seems fairly cemented at safety, even if he has practice there a little bit. But, John, it is a reminder, is it not, just how versatile Cine has a chance to be for Georgia. He really does multitudes of things for the Bulldogs, even so much that he can at least be considered in kind of a coverage role there in the secondary as well.
He's one of those guys. It's amazing when you watch him play. Now he seems like a veteran because, I still have considered him a young guy. But you look at that DB room, and he's a veteran voice among the group, and it's surprising to see how quickly he's assimilated. Now, because of his speed, because of his length, he's one of those guys that can cross-train. And, ultimately, do I think he's going to end up at cornerback? No. His fit is a field patrolling, athletic, playmaking, downhill safety, and that's what we've come to see and expect from him.
And so, in fact, here on Dog Nation Freeze Frame, presented today by Harris Cherokee Casino Resort, I want to show you a couple of these moments from Cine, how he's lined up, how Georgia's chosen to use him. John, let's take a look at a couple of these instances, kind of from the Missouri game here and other spots of exactly how Georgia has in the past chosen to line up Cine and, kind of the role that he feels for this Georgia defense.
Right. And alignment, I think, is the first place to start because it's not your traditional strong safety, free safety alignment where the strong safety is to the strong side of the formation and free safeties on the backside, or even what we saw with J.R. Reed and Richard LeCount. Reed would play left, LeCount would play right. Now, with Cine, what we've seen mostly this past season is he lines up to the boundary. So if it's on a hash, he would be that hash, the safety to that hash on the short side of the field. So it'll be interesting to see if that's based on skill or just where he was at development-wise and where the fit is, because it's pretty unique to see the way that Georgia has deployed him as well as Christopher Smith.
We talked last week about Darnell Washington and Kirby Smart's line about you can exploit sometimes safeties who don't cover full-time. As Smart said, when you do see Cine kind of put into that coverage role, what kind of coverage skills do you see from him?
Well, first thing is he's super athletic. The speed, the top-end speed is there. I mean, it's amazing how Georgia's been able to recruit these guys that not only are athletic and have good coverage skills, but they're also high-end speed guys. And I think that's the way Lewis has played since the first day he's got there. When you watch him play, aside from his ability to run, is his physicality. I mean, he is coming downhill. He is meeting folks at the line. When you look at these plays early on at these pictures, he's lined up at that safety position. He's making plays in the run game at the line of scrimmage. So his physicality is something that has earmarked his game from the jump.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's transition now and look at a couple of things that Cine does. And this is kind of like that classic safety role where, you patrol that area in the middle of the field. You prevent those slot receivers, whomever else, from kind of, occupying that territory there. What have you seen from Lewis in that role, even in a time in which, honestly, the physicality of the game has been taken away somewhat? You can't be quite the headhunter over the middle that you used to be, but that doesn't completely neuter Cine's ability to kind of get in there and affect that part of the game still there as well.
No, I mean, you watch him play, and the days of Greg Blue smacking folks coming across the middle, or Thomas Davis, or Sean Jones. I mean, Georgia has had a bevy of safeties that would smack you right in the mouth. And Cine is another one that, plays that old school role a little bit as the enforcer over the middle. Now, rules restrictions have certainly tapered that back a little bit, but you watch him play, and he is a physical guy. I mean, for Falcons fans, we saw a little bit of that with Keanu Neal, who would just jack folks. And he's that same type, that new breed, if you will, that has that length and athleticism to run, but also brings that physicality and that enforcer role for guys that are so brave as to continue to cross the middle.
So put me in the mind of the opposing quarterback here for a moment. Obviously, you're trying to read everything that goes on, and figuring out what safeties are doing is part of that job for the opposing quarterback. When you have a guy like Cine, to my eyes, it looks like capable of doing so much, including taking away what sometimes for quarterbacks can be an easier throw over the middle. How does Cine make the job of a quarterback reading defenses more difficult?
Well, I think it's the versatility that you have with the safety. The fact that both can play deep, both can come down into the box. It's not a designation that is automatically attributed to Cine. He's not automatically the box safety. So when they go from that either 3-4 or 4-3 with 7 men in the box, some of the times it's Cine that's coming down and being that eighth player, and sometimes it's Smith that's rolled down. So I think that creates versatility. Now, the only reason you have that versatility is if both can do a good job in the back end and cover. And, if you're trying to pick a guy apart and say, how can he improve? What's that jump that he can make from his sophomore season into his junior year? I think it's just the angles. He's so fast that sometimes one or two steps with that athleticism, you're covering a lot of ground. And if it's in the wrong direction, it creates some bad angles at times. I mean, he's a guy that is a young up and comer, or has been, and now he's transitioning into this veteran leadership role just because of his experience and the lack thereof across the board in the rest of the secondary.
And of course, this is Dog Nation freeze frame. So if we think about a single image from Cine this past year that maybe sticks out as much as anything, unfortunately, it may be the big hit that he laid on Kyle Pitts in the Florida game. Also, the hit on Ritter from the Cincinnati game kind of comes to mind here, the Bearcats quarterback. And, John, I'm curious to hear your evaluation of this, because as a fan and someone who tries to watch college football closely, but certainly not in the analyst chair in which you sit in, there's a part of me that says, if I'm a coach, I'm not quite so sure I handle this, because I don't want him to dial it down too much. But, clearly, penalties are penalties. And by the letter of the rule, what happened in the Florida game certainly was. But at the same time, you want that willingness to embrace physicality. You want that to be a part of his playing DNA. So what's the takeaway when it comes to that moment with Pitts, the moment with Ritter? What's the takeaway from all of that?
Well, it's balance, right? You want the enforcer in the middle. You want the guy that is not shying away from the physicality of the game, especially from that safety position. They're asked to do so much in today's game, cover these athletic tight ends down the field, but also come downhill against some of these bigger running backs and make plays at the line of scrimmage. So the last thing you want to do is take away his physicality. Now, with that, the penalty in the bowl game, as well as the ejection on the hit against Kyle Pitts, it's tempering those, right? How can we incorporate the physicality and making those hits and trying to deter guys from crossing the middle, but doing so in a way that doesn't hurt the team. Because when Cine's out of the game, where you give them a free 15, that hurts your team. That puts the opponent in an advantageous situation. So you don't want to take away his physicality. You're just trying to redirect it, if you will, and clean up some of those shots. Even the Kyle Pitts hit, you look at him, he's trying to turn his head, but there are better ways, better techniques that just come with experience. I mean, you're just trying to balance that player safety issue with, the enforcer role for these safeties.
In fact, the matter is there's only a small number of people, maybe even in the football world, who are that willing to just, with total abandon, put their body on the line out there like Cine has been willing to do, even if it was a penalty. The fact of the matter is that spirit that's inside of him, if you will, that helps him in all other aspects of football as well, even in those moments when maybe it goes beyond what's currently allowed within the boundary of the rules.
Well, you can't, it's hard to, I shouldn't say you can't. It's hard to coach that into a player. I mean, being physical, having that enforced, that mentality, just come downhill, reckless abandon. You see the target, you hit the target with 15 yards head of steam, and the player you're running towards probably doing the same thing. That's a difficult skill to teach. It's much easier. I got a buddy who likes to say it's easier to lead with the bit than with the whip. So
Yeah.
if you're looking at it, here's a guy that, maybe we can craft this a little better so that you're in a situation where you're still being physical. You can still play the game the way it's supposed to be played, but do so in a way that doesn't hurt other players, but certainly lets everybody know that you're on the field. So it's easier. Again, you much rather work with a guy like Cine who's got it in his DNA.
I want to show you one more video clip from Lewis. In addition to embracing his on-field role, also realizing, as I said before, he's played a lot more football than a lot of the guys who occupy the secondary with him this year. And as he said earlier in spring practice, the role of being a leader is something that he's ready to take head on this Lewis scene once again.
Kirby was not lying when he said everyone's getting a look at cornerback. I mean, he's tried everyone, including myself. But I don't know. I mean, if I'm put there, I'm going to play it to the best of my ability.
So, John, with that in mind, I mean, you almost think about Lewis in the same role that Richard LeCount was in for Georgia a year ago, and J.R. Reed was in for the Dogs a couple of years before that. How do you think things change for Cine now that he's not the young up-and-comer, but he really is kind of the stately veteran now in the Georgia secondary? How does that change the overall profile for him as a player in terms of what he's asked to do schematically or just what he does and from a leadership standpoint?
Well, I think the best thing about it is he's had these role models that have come before him that he can look up to and learn from. A Richard LeCount, a guy who's a fan favorite and for a good reason. He played with passion. He progressed as a player, started off as a talented safety that sometimes would get himself out of position. But when Cine's able to learn from a guy like that, and as he transitions, like we've said multiple times, he's the elder statesman in this room. The other players are going to look to him to see how things are done. So part of this progression as you matriculate through the process of being a young player who's trying to contribute to becoming a leader in that secondary is the maturity of recognizing, instead of your eyes being on the players above you, now you're seeing that other players are looking to you as to how you practice, how you go about your business, how you prepare during the week, what you do during adversity in the middle of a game. And that's something that these players are going to look to Lewis for because of his experience. He's a guy that's seen and played a lot of football where a lot of these other players have not yet.
No doubt one of the most pivotal and interesting players on this Georgia roster, UGA safety Lewis Cine. A lot expected from him this upcoming season. For those of you observing Good Friday today, celebrating Easter this weekend, thank you so much for being here on Dog Nation Freeze Frame, presented today by our friends at Harris Cherokee Casino Resort. John, outstanding analysis as always. I certainly appreciate your time here today.
Wow, he's a fun one to watch. I think we're all excited about seeing Cine in the back end and how his game progresses, because it's fun to watch a guy come downhill like that. That makes all the Dog fans excited.
John, look forward to hearing more from you soon. And to everybody else, look forward to seeing you all soon back here once again on another edition of Dog Nation Freeze Frame. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.